Welcome to 5 Fresh Tips, a podcast from Fresh Starts Registry. Our Fresh Starts experts are here to help you with everything you need to begin again, starting with 5 simple fresh tips. Are you ready? Let's do this.
Hello, everyone. In case you don't know who I am, my name is Paulette Rigo. I am the CEO and founder of Better Divorce Academy, author of Better Divorce Blueprint, and the host of the Better Divorce podcast. If you see a little bit of a theme going, you've caught it. But I am here at the request and the honor of being a vetted professional in the Fresh Registry. I am over the moon happy to be here. So just a little bit about my 5 fresh tips. I'm going to dig right into my expertise. Just so you know, I'm a credentialed private mediator, which means that I work with couples who are avoid all things litigation. No one's a plaintiff, no one's the defendant. They're not suing each other. But unfortunately, not everybody could privately mediate. It does take 2 parties to want that experience, to keep your private life private, save a ton of money, and avoid litigation. In those instances, I act as a certified divorce coach, where I work with one of the parties. I lock arms with them, walk through the fire, and get divorced with them. And I'm also the director of coaching and case management of a company named Divorce Right, which is the HR divorce solution for corporations and business. So as you can see, I live, eat, sleep, and breathe divorce. I personally went through an 8.5-year fully litigated case. I wish it was a case that included a 12-day trial. That 12-day trial took place over 9 months. And then after all of that, there was a 4-year Supreme Appellate Court process in the state. So I pretty much have lived, walked, ate, and slept and breathed the divorce experience. But my clients and people that either read my book or use my workbook, use my cards, or get educated by me, don't make mistakes, and I don't want you to either. So right away, let's start with those 5 fresh tips. Number 1 is the first thing you have to do is be 100% aware of all of your marital assets and debt. So all of the money that the couple has created from the wedding until, well, today, you're still married, is considered a marital asset, although there is marital, non-marital, and premarital. So that's another conversation, and you might want to check with an attorney in your state to make sure that are these marital assets. But just so you know, if you as a couple created those assets from wedding, right, to now, those are normally considered marital assets. If you're in the dark and you don't have access, what does that mean? Login, password, you can't go down to the financial institution and print a statement. You don't know what's in the checking. You don't know what's in the savings. You're not aware of 401k investments or credit card debt, student loans, IRS payments. You're just in the dark. We've got to start there. It is essential that you shift from being in the dark to being in control and being in the know about all of your financial assets and debt. So you've got to start with that. So be careful that you just take for granted that someone is going to say, oh, don't worry about it, honey. I've got that all figured out. I know where all the money is. You don't need to know where it is. Correction, you do. So very politely, very calmly, get educated. Make sure you know where everything is and have access to it. And also, you've got to know where your tax returns are. You should have at least the last 3 years, preferably 5. Going on to number 2. How long have you been in a place of confusion and overwhelm? Did you know % of divorce is filed by women? Women, 70%. Now, the other statistic you should know is that 2 years is the average amount of time that women contemplate divorce internally in their own little world. They don't tell anyone. They keep it to themselves. Why? It's overwhelming, it's embarrassing. They feel a sense of guilt and they don't know what to do about those feelings. So that's typically when that overwhelm and stress and confusion starts to multiply. They're at the computer at 2 a.m, Googling all kinds of catastrophizing scenarios. So if you've been in that place of confusion and overwhelm and you're not able to voice it to a safe community or a safe place where you can trust someone, whether that be a therapist or a divorce coach or an expert that can really help you get clear on your emotions. I always like to call it your why. What is your why? What is your, boil it down to, why is this relationship uncomfortable and painful and confusing? Have you gone to therapy? Are you able to have a conversation with your spouse about things that you're not getting along about? Is there an overwhelming sense of doom and gloom and pain? If you've been in that position for a very long time, it's probably time to get some help, because the longer you live in that land of confusion means that it's going to either trap you or make you feel like you can't make a change, or you're going to feel as if, okay, fine, throw in the towel and just get done with it. So you should have a good timeline of, how long have I really been feeling this overwhelming confusion? Number 3, have you experienced any of the types of abuse? Now, there are 7 types that I have boiled down to. So on one, abuse can be anything from feeling controlled, where you are not in the know about, well, we mentioned the finances, but from the categories, it's naturally physical abuse, sexual abuse, and those are the 2 that typically get the press, as they should. But the others are a little bit more covert. We have psychological, mental, and emotional abuse. Sometimes those 3 kind of work as a team, sometimes they don't. And then lastly, financial and spiritual. Spiritual abuse is when you feel like your spirit is being broken, where you feel as if you just don't matter. You feel a sense of being manipulated and controlled in an overwhelming sense, but you can't really put your finger on it, like a broken bone. So if you're experiencing any of those types of abuse, it's important that you document it so that you can have a foundation on which to build the courage and the evidence to proceed. And number 4, are you and your spouse able to communicate with some level of honesty and respect? This is a big can of worms, but if you feel that you can have a conversation with your spouse about your experiences and their experiences and how you're feeling and how they're feeling, and you really want an outcome of your divorce decision to be amicable and uncontested, great. It's actually more common than I ever thought, just because I had experienced something personally that was nothing like that. It doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. So you have the ability to know that I've got options. If my spouse is willing to communicate respectfully, kindly, maybe not all the time, but the majority of the time, chances are that you can privately mediate, because you're both willing to have an outcome, a resolution, and a settlement that's in the best interest of both parties and children. If you don't, well, probably time to get a coach so that you can know what to do next. And lastly, number 5, are you aware of the differences between private mediation and court-appointed mediation? I am often asked about mediation because there are 5 methods of divorce and only 4 things the courts care about. But in the 5 methods of divorce, number 2 is mediation. But there are 3 forms of mediation. Court appointed, which is really a part of litigation. Now, in most states, or if not all states, litigation involves both sides, one being the plaintiff and one being the defendant, being represented by counsel, unless they're representing themselves. And the court system is now encouraging, if not mandating, mediation to be a litigated process. That's not what I'm talking about. You are basically litigating and throwing in an opportunity to see if you can make a decision with your spouse and attorneys without letting the judge be the one to make the decision. But in private mediation, you have the option of working with a private mediator where both parties are present. You're not in a courthouse, you've met the mediator's had an opportunity to get to know the parties, understand the situation, review the documentation. Whether attorneys are present or not, which is always an option, you can privately mediate with attorneys present, or you can mediate privately without attorneys present. That doesn't mean that you should not review the documents with your attorney prior or after the mediation, but it does mean that you're not paying both of the attorneys to be sitting there during mediation, because that's where the cost gets involved. So I hope these little tips have been very helpful. I could go on for days to help people avoid making mistakes. I save money, time, a lot of heartache, and bad decision making. So this is my obsession and commitment to those that are going through the divorce process all the way from confusion to conclusion.
Thank you for listening to 5 Fresh Tips, a podcast from Fresh Starts Registry. To browse the expert resource guide and build your hype team today, head to freshstartsregistry.com/experts. And remember, we are always so proud of you. Keep up the amazing work.